Welcome to the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I'm dedicated to helping you take control of your life. Together, we'll explore practical tips, expert advice, and inspiring stories to help you overcome obstacles and achieve your goals. Making small changes is possible and can lead to big results. Are you ready? Let's go do this. Hey, Brian, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Hey, Sue, it's great to see you.
I like to let my guests introduce themselves and then we'll go from there. So jump in wherever you feel you want to.
Yeah, so Brian Childress, I'm in Virginia. I like to say that I'm a husband, a father, and an avid adventurer. As far as work goes, I'm a technical advisor for a number of different companies. I serve as a fractional CTO for startups and small and medium businesses, helping them to deliver on their software strategy. So I do a lot of custom software development. I've been in software for quite a while. It is not my first career. It's really my second professional career. I was not the kid at 8 years old, building computer programs or video games on my family computer. Just that wasn't me. So I really didn't get into software and computers until really graduate school. And from there, I really found kind of my niche, the thing that I could do really, really well and gravitated to. And I mean, that was 15 or so years ago. So.
And I know that we had talked before that you have left your W-2. You want to talk a little bit about that and what goes around that?
Yeah. So I left my W-2, a high paying 6-figure salary, very cushy, all the benefits and the bells and whistles, and decided that I was looking for something a little bit different. So most of my professional career, I've been moonlighting or freelancing. So I've had small projects on the side. And over the last probably 18 months or so, I really focused on building up a kind of a book of business and a set of clients to be able to leave my W-2. So it was a very strategic focus. Put in a lot of work. It really felt like working 2 full-time jobs and then some. Thankfully, I've got a very supportive wife, and we were able to make it work. And then I was able to leave. I have replaced my 6-figure income with a couple fantastic clients that I get to work with every day, and it gives me the space and time to continue to grow my business.
So what made you decide in the first place to leave your W-2, and talk a little bit about if you had any fears, hesitations around doing that and some things that you did to mitigate that?
Yeah, I definitely pretty sure I had all the fears, all the feelings going into it, but I really focused a lot on what I thought I would be able to do. I really, as I've been progressing through my career, climbing the corporate ladder, doing really well. I've got, a number of different accolades and, notches on my belt. I was looking for something more, something a little bit different that I didn't think jumping to another job, a higher title or position would give me. And so I tried to find something that I thought would. And for me, that was going out on my own and continuing to do what I was doing for a number of different people. And so far, so good. Things have gone really, really well. One of the quotes that I think really helped me, and I can't remember who I can attribute it to, but basically it's this idea of, well, my worst case scenario is my current status, right? So my worst case scenario for me, and again, I'm very, very fortunate having been in technology, and I'm a software engineer. So I can, for the most part, walk into another software engineering job. That's my worst case scenario, which is also my present reality. So, I think that particular quote, again, I wish I could attribute it to the right person, but that was the one that kind of put me over the edge and really kind of gave me the confidence.
Yeah, I've heard that quote too. And I can't remember if it was Tim Ferriss or maybe one of those guys talking about, face your fears about leaving your job and ask yourself that, what are you really afraid of? What's your worst case scenario? Stay in the same job that you're in. So can it get much worse than that? I don't know. I mean, you can go down the rabbit hole, I guess. Did you think about things like healthcare and savings and losing job, or does your wife work?
She doesn't. She doesn't. So I'm the sole provider. So that definitely factored into things. I think if, our healthcare situation was a little bit different, then, I probably would have made the leap a long time ago. But that was definitely something to consider. Not only that, but we have a growing family. So we're actually expecting, we have a little one due next month. So, when you look at it on the face of everything, it's like it makes absolutely no sense to leave a steady W-2 job that has great health benefits and, suck it up, suffer
Mhm.
through all those things. Definitely went through my head, but it felt like the time was right. And, we've got some savings that we're willing to kind of invest is how I've looked at it. So we're willing to spend some of that money to, if the business and my client work isn't meeting all of our financial needs, then we've got a little buffer room there. But thankfully, we really haven't had to tap into that at all.
That's great. What are some of the intangible benefits of quitting that you didn't think you were going to experience?
I didn't realize how much stress I was putting on myself and then ultimately my family and those around me until I left. So in order to make, working full time and trying to build a business on the side work, I was working a lot of hours. So, I was up early in the morning, working late into the evenings, trying to balance everything. And, it got to the point where I was going from one 30-minute meeting to the next. And if one meeting ran over by a minute, like things were just getting, and so just not having that type of stress has been huge. Getting to spend time
Mm.
sitting on the couch and watching Netflix. Yeah, I'm definitely binge watching a lot more shows than I had just because it's a possibility and really enjoying that kind of downtime. And really with that, it's allowed me to just free my mind a little bit. And from there, I think that's where a lot of really good ideas have an opportunity to start to grow and flourish.
Yeah, I've heard that said before that if you are operating in a state of being constantly stressed out, that you don't have that room for creativity that you normally would have. What was the one thing that you found easy about leaving your job that you didn't think would be?
That's a really good question. I don't really, I miss a lot of the people that I was working with. I don't necessarily miss any of the work or the meetings. Like I'm in much better control of that now. So, if a meeting needs to be 5 minutes, it can be, where I don't have that. And so just realizing that just before we got on here, Sue, I looked at my calendar for tomorrow. I like to kind of get an idea of what's coming ahead, and a big smile across my face because the one thing I have is to have coffee with a buddy that I haven't seen in a while in the morning. Like that's the one thing I have to do, right? I don't have the meetings for meetings sake, and I have a lot of client work, a lot of ways that I can help them, but the things that I have to do, thankfully, it's a lot less these days.
Sounds less stress too. What's one thing that you thought would be hard about starting your own business and being an entrepreneur, but really wasn't?
I think, I was always so worried about, like healthcare and insurance and do I have the right business license and how do I do taxes and how do I pay myself and all of those sorts of things. And for better or worse, I kind of just jumped into it and, said, okay, well, here's a couple options and we'll figure it out as we go. And I did that as like a forcing function because if I knew if I
Mhm.
had to get it perfect before I left, then I wouldn't. I wouldn't do it. There were so many reasons or excuses that I could put in front of myself. So I said, well, what the heck? I've got 15 days to figure out health insurance, and here's our three options, and which one are we going to go with? And that part's a little scary, but again, at the end of the day, like we'll figure it out. I'm not worried about it at all.
I love that you said that it didn't have to be perfect before leaving. I think a lot of us think you have to have all your ducks in row. And I'm sure there's some things, you talked about having the finances there, you talked about building a book of business, working on the side before you left, but you didn't have 100% of it. So I think that's a really good point because sometimes, like I said, we think we have to have it all together and we don't. and it still works out anyway. And I love the word force function. Like it forces to put you in that position where you actually have to go and do something and have a result, like the healthcare issue, which tends to be a big problem, not problem, but a big question in entrepreneurs' minds for those who are looking to quit their W-2s. It's kind of like the first thing they think of. It's like, oh no, what about healthcare? But then you realize there's thousands and thousands of entrepreneurs out there. So they have to be doing
Right.
something. What in your story, what are some small steps that you took that gave results?
I like to say that I'm the 10-year overnight success. So, I've been doing freelancing or moonlighting for well over 10 years. And over that time, I had the intention of, okay, I want to learn how to sell projects. I want to learn how to find clients and do invoicing and figure out taxes, and where the consequences weren't that high. It wasn't that bad, right? I didn't need to make sure that I had these things in place to make sure that, my family wasn't going to be supported, right? Because I had that healthy W-2 income, that really, really did help. And just continuing to evolve and find things, and, being able to experiment with that, bit of a safety net, I think that really did help me. And I learned a lot, really trying to, like, how can I put myself out there? Those were some of the small steps that I've taken, over the last few years that have had just incredible payoffs by putting myself out there, pushing against some of the fears and discomfort I might have. I mean, it's bananas what has kind of come into my world since doing that. And a lot of those things just not things that I would normally think I would do. Really kind of pushing.
Like what?
Talking to you here on a podcast. I got into conference speaking several years ago, right? I I had to take a public speaking class in my undergraduate, and I put it off to the last semester of my senior year. I avoided it. I did terrible. I'm amazed that I got a passing grade. It wasn't something that I was driven to. And now I'm applying to conferences all over the world and am super excited to get out there and do that. It's not that I'm not nervous or, not uncomfortable, but I really have become very passionate about using that platform to help share the knowledge that I've gained over my career. But those are things that, 10 years ago, if you'd said, yeah, you're going to be speaking, to hundreds and hundreds of people in, some foreign city, I would have never thought that was possible.
That's exciting. Are you excited about that? I'm
I
excited
am.
for
Yeah,
you.
no, absolutely. I love it. I've got a conference
Yeah.
coming up here at the end of the week, and I can't wait to
Oh,
talk with
cool.
everyone and, share some of the things that I have.
I like your perspective that you brought up, that it took you 10 years to really build behind the scenes, to have the confidence and connections to be able to quit your W-2 and start ramping up. And the other thing that you said that I think is also really cool is that you said you never thought you would be on stage. But here you are so many years later that now you're going to start speaking. You have been speaking in front of people, and it's really funny the roads that life takes us down. Now, do you consider yourself a type of person who is like open to other possibilities, or is that something that you had to fight when opportunities like that came your way?
I think now I'm much, much more open to it, and I'm just kind of sitting back and, taking in what the universe brings to me, and it's incredible. 4 days after I left my W-2, one of my clients offered me just an incredible opportunity that would have never been a possibility if I didn't take that chance and leave my W-2. Yeah, I think there's just so many fantastic opportunities, and if our energy and our mindset's in the right place, then, it's pretty astounding what can come into our world.
Talk about mindset. Have you always kind of been in that mind space, or are there things that you do each day or learned about that kind of made you more self-aware to what's going on around you versus maybe not being
It's
open?
taken a lot of work. I wouldn't say that it was something that kind of came naturally. Now I feel like I'm much better at it. There's always room for growth, But I think I got into personal development several years ago, and I just started consuming every podcast and audiobook that there was on the topic. And in that, tried to find the different things that people were suggesting and see which one works and which ones don't work for me. And, it's been a really, really fun process to learn more about myself and the way that I think and the ways that I've been, sabotaging my own progress. What's been really interesting for me is I've done really, really well professionally. I've got more accolades and fancy titles and those sorts of things than many of my peers. And because of that, I felt like the feeling or the that I had that I wanted to do more or I was capable of more, I was holding myself back so much because I had already achieved a ton. And when I look around, you know, I'm already doing really, really well by comparison. And so what one of the big mindset shifts for me was comparing myself, not to my peers. And so that mindset shift alone has opened more doors and more opportunities because I'm looking at things a little bit differently.
Yeah. So how did you push yourself then to go further? Because you mentioned that you have all these awards, you have these accolades, and what kept you from being complacent?
I had this burning desire. I knew that sitting around and kind of just being comfortable with the way things were, just I couldn't do it. It drove me bananas. And so, I knew I needed something, but I didn't know what it was. And so maybe 2 years ago, I went and hired a professional coach. I went and spent Honda Civic money to hire somebody to work one on one with me to kind of work through a lot of things, limiting beliefs and self sabotage and imposter syndrome and all the things that I think many of us encounter and deal with. Just worked with him and masterminds, and since then additional
Hmm.
coaches just to help and kind of reframing all of this, and that's been hugely beneficial. But it took an investment, both time and money.
Yeah, I mean, they do say when you invest in yourself, the best thing you can do is give yourself the education that pays off. And I suspect that your return on the investment is greater than what it cost you in the first place. I know we talked off camera about a really cool win that came out of a podcast interview. You want to talk about that
Yeah,
story?
I don't even know if the podcast has actually been published yet. That's how fresh.
Oh,
So yeah, I went on a podcast, very similar to this, very technical focused, and we had a fantastic conversation. I think we even went over maybe 10 or 15 minutes. And after we were done recording, the host, said, "Hey, do you have a few more minutes? I want to kind of run something by you." And he was like, "So tell me more in detail about like what you do, how you help people." And from there, he's like, "Yeah, you are what we need." And so, I don't remember the exact dates, but we recorded on, let's say, a Thursday. And by Tuesday, I had a signed contract and paid invoice, and we were off to the races. And since then, that relationship has continued to grow and continued to flourish, doing fantastic things, really excited about where they are and what they're doing. And all of that came from me, taking the chance and saying, "Yeah, I'll go on this podcast. It looks pretty cool." Um, just taking that chance.
yeah, you never know what's going to come out. How did that make you feel when you got that?
I had to like really sit back and reflect on that. Like, holy cow! I went from and to be honest, Sue, that engagement was enough, of a confidence builder, and it brought in enough revenue to put me over the edge and say, "Okay, I can do this on my own." And my W-2.
Mm. Oh, that's sweet. Did you struggle with imposter syndrome when that
Oh
happened?
yeah, absolutely, I do. And I think now, having put in all the work that I have, it's easier to recognize when it's coming and what it feels like. And I think that alone is has been really, really beneficial, just to be able to recognize it and kind of sit with it. Because I don't think we ever get away from those feelings of imposter syndrome. We just learn how to,
Mhm.
kind of change our view on them, I think.
Yeah, how do you do that for you personally?
Anytime that I'm feeling a bit off, I really I try and take a step back. I have this like visual in my head where it's me sitting above me, kind of looking down, like, okay, what are we feeling right now? Why am I feeling that way? Is it because, I said something I shouldn't have, or I didn't say something that I should have? What's going on? Is it because of this or that? A lot of the things that have been um, recognized with, the work with coaches and so forth, and just kind of sitting with it and recognizing that there's a reason that those feelings come up. And then from there, kind of, I use journaling as a tool. I'll use audio notes as well. I'll just kind of talk myself through what's going on. And, eventually after a minute or two, you get to like, okay, yeah, this is just, it's nothing to worry about, nothing to be concerned on. So,
Yeah, talking it out tends to be a good reliever, stress reliever too, because it gets it out of your brain, and whether you put it into audio or whether you put it on paper, that always helps. If you could go back in time to your younger self and give yourself a message, what would it be?
if I went back in time, I think I would encourage myself to take more chances, bigger chances in those early days. I think, you know, early on, I didn't feel like I had as much confidence. And so I think I might have restricted myself a bit more than I potentially could have. So I think there were a lot of opportunities that I could have taken. And so now instead of, harping on the past, I am just more eager to take those opportunities in the future.
What would your advice be to your younger self then to go take that chance then? If you were hesitant back then, what do you think would have been the game changer for you to take a
I
chance?
think kind of back to when we first started speaking, Sue, just what's the worst that's going to happen, right? Okay. So they say no. So you know, your car breaks down and you are stuck in some small town for the night and you get to explore and meet new people. Like, what's the worst that can really happen? Right. I think we're, as humans, right, we are kind of fear driven and pessimist by nature, right? That's how we've managed to survive for so long. But those protective mechanisms no longer serve us in the same way. And so just, kind of thinking about, well, what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, that's true. How do you look at fear then when it comes up?
I think fear is a powerful tool. I really do, because it's trying to tell us
How so?
something. Whether it's there's an actual fear, right? We might get hurt or someone else may get hurt. I think
Yeah, I'm not talking
okay.
about those, like, because yeah, not those kind of fears. I mean, like, you're getting chased by a rabid dog. Yeah, you're going to be fearful. You're getting attacked by a bear. Yeah, but don't you find that we have those micro fears that come in and, leaving a W-2, that's kind of that's definitely fear inducing, maybe to some, or going out on your own or just speaking your mind, that could be fearful. Things like that where you're really not in a life or death situation, but they're real. The body will produce that fear within you. What's your approach to it?
I reflect a lot back on previous successes, just really trying to understand, okay, what is this similar to this current situation, this current feeling that I'm in? Is this similar? How did that play out? Is there something I wish I had done, but I was, at that point lived in the fear and didn't allow myself to do something? Maybe this is the opportunity to actually try and see what comes out of that. So now I have new information. So I reflect a lot back on, my previous successes, my previous, missteps, and use that as a way to kind of measure where I want to go or how I want to move forward.
Oh, I like that. So you combat fear with previous success stories and big wins. I like that. Now, you mentioned about vision and goals. Do you actually write down your vision, like a 1 year, or 3 year, or 5 year vision, and set goals like that? You
I
find that?
do. I do. I might not be as specific. So I think right now my vision is written 3 years into the future. And I wrote it in present tense. And it's just a day by, or it's explaining a day. I went skiing in the morning and then I had dinner with a friend here. And this is, what my house and all of these things look like in very specific detail. And for me, that helps to kind of always reframe where it is that I'm looking to go. it helps a little bit in defining that why, and that helps push me forward. So if I'm having kind of a crummy day, then I'll look towards that vision and say, okay, things are, my vision not only includes some of those future ideals, the places that I want to go or the things that I want to experience, but it also focuses on some of the gains that I've had, some of those wins, some of the accolades and the places I've been able to travel and the adventures I've been able to have. I focus on those as well as part of my vision, just to kind of again level set. Like I've made really good progress, and that is going to help to fuel me to continue to grow and to give and to contribute in the ways that I want to, even ways that I probably can't even imagine right now.
And you found some of the things that were on your vision have already come
They
true
have, they have.
so far? Isn't that wild about writing visions? That happened to me
So
too.
I when we moved a few years ago, I had found a notebook from undergraduate, and in there I had a list of goals, and almost every single one I had checked off. Every single one.
Oh,
Just the
wow.
way that I had built my life and the opportunities that were in front of me that I took. It's pretty crazy just writing them down. I think it's good to reflect on them and read them often, but even if we
Mhm.
don't, it's kind of wild how things can play out.
Yeah, yeah, that happened to me when I joined. We're both part of the same mastermind group called Emerge. And when I joined in October last year, one of the exercises was to write a vision. And I never did it before. So it was totally foreign to me, but I wrote it and left it on the Google Doc where it was. And it turned out when I went back and read it about 3 months later, on it was, I'm going to start a podcast. And in that time frame, I did. I started the podcast in January, and I've completely forgot that I wrote it on that 1 year vision. So it is really weird. You can write these things, and even if you don't look at them every day, sometimes what you wrote down does come to pass. And I think that's just
Yeah.
crazy. But it's such a common story when you start talking to people who write their visions. So you mentioned about your why. Do you want to talk a little bit about your why and what's your why? What drives you to do what you do?
I know that I'm capable of a lot, and I look to leverage that to be able to contribute to others. And that can look in a lot of different ways, right? So financially, my why is to be able to contribute, lots of money to organizations that can help support others, right? Just as a way to multiply the effort, to be able to contribute hours and knowledge. So I contribute a fair amount of my, deep technical background to organizations that are moving in a positive direction. So startups and software companies that are in the healthcare space or helping disadvantaged populations or something. I try and contribute there. I really enjoy educating and helping folks to learn. So any opportunity I can find, I will contribute there. So part of the reasons that I, go on podcasts like this or speak at conferences is to be able to, share this information. Doesn't mean that I'm not nervous doing them, but my why is strong enough to want to share that information. And if one person hears it and it helps them, then I think I've done really well.
What kind of information do you get out there? Like if somebody asks you to come and speak, what are some things that
So
you
most
talk
of the
about?
time, I'm talking about technical topics. I focus a
Like what?
lot on security. So how can we build more secure software applications? Because at the end of the day, I mean, technology rules our lives these days. And so, I think as software engineers, we have a responsibility to do the best by our customers and really keeping their applications secure. So it's a big area that I focus on. I deal with a lot of financial and healthcare platforms. And so I have a strong, keen eye on security. And so that's a big piece.
Okay. As we get close to closing here, I have core three questions that I always ask everybody. So, you
Sure.
ready? Okay. What's a book or podcast that has had a significant impact on you?
I think a lot of Benjamin Hardy's books have really had a big impact, right? 10x is easier than
Yeah.
2x, The Gap in the Game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gap in the game.
Those were the ones
Yeah.
that immediately come to mind. There's quite a few. So I'm a avid audiobook reader. If it can be on Audible, I'm going to consume it.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. What's one question or topic you wish I would have asked about, and how would you have answered the question or expanded on the topic?
I think, it's important for us, as we continue to grow, to find ways to help others to continue to grow. So maybe, I would love the opportunity to talk about how we can create opportunities for others. I think podcasts like this are a great way to share our experiences, just to encourage folks to do more and to kind of push them, dealing with that discomfort.
What's one small step that someone can do today to help them change their tomorrow?
I think sharing their story, it might feel like a big step, but maybe sharing their day, something that they did, right? It doesn't have to be earth shattering or a complete game changer, but getting into the habit of sharing something that we did today, whether we succeeded or failed. I think there's a lot in that we can create a better connection with others around us when we're vulnerable and authentic and sharing, the things that we do in our day to day. Whether we think it's big or not, it could have a significant impact on someone else.
Oh, that's great. I love that. For our one small step. And you know what I love? I love asking somebody a question. What's something that's awesome that's happened to you today? And when you ask that question, it kind of gets them thinking about their day. Even if something awesome didn't happen, they'll go looking for it then later in the day. So I really do agree with you that sharing and being vulnerable also builds that connection and helps people, see that you're real as well. Brian, if people want to reach out to you, how would they find you?
I'm most active on LinkedIn these days. So Brian-Childress. I encourage everyone to reach out, connect with me. I'm happy to have a chat there.
Oh, perfect. All right. Well, thank you for the gift of your time. This was awesome.
Thank you for the opportunity. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I value your time with me, and I seek to make every moment count. In order to make lasting change in your life, listening is usually not enough. So I want to ask you, what practical steps are you going to put into action today as a result of listening to this podcast? Remember, any step, any action, no matter how small, starts your journey to a big win. And if you're not sure where to get started, reach out to me and let's have a conversation. Until next time, love yourself, then love others. Peace.